Hi, you've clicked onto today's tropical tidbit for Saturday. Over here in the Atlantic, we still got Igor churning away in the central Atlantic, and this is a very massive storm. Hurricane winds out 105 miles from the center, tropical storm force winds 345 miles from the center. That means this hurricane will be starting to affect Bermuda sometime tonight, and this is going to be a very bad storm for them, especially if the eye passes to the west of them. The winds on this in the northeast quadrant of the storm are the worst, and it is likely that this is going to cause a lot of damage on the island. Only a category 2 in terms of winds, but the central pressure is still in the 940s, and this is a monster, and the influence here is insane. You can see it's pulling southwest winds off of Venezuela all the way in the Caribbean down here. So this is a massive storm, going to be a bad situation for them, and we will be thinking about them as this hurricane passes over. Hopefully they are prepared. This is Julia getting sheared by Igor, moving out in tandem with him, and we've got a new system trying to develop southwest of the Cape Verde Islands, and that will be gradual due to all this dry air off to the northwest. This is interesting to see this over here in the western Gulf of Mexico. I commented about this in my blog yesterday after making the video. We had Carl come across over here into the Bay of Campeche and turned southwest into Veracruz and utterly disappeared. He's somewhere in here, but he fizzled very fast. He had a rapid pressure rise of 12 millibars in 90 minutes on his way to landfall in Veracruz, and the Hurricane Center said that the rapid weakening was unexplained, and you know, guys, this was not unexplained. This was fairly obvious. The area of greatest ventilation has always been to the northeast of Carl ever since he approached the Yucatan, and that's why if he had come across farther north towards this area and towards Texas, he would have been a Cat 4 or Cat 5 monster coming into here. But it was obvious there was an upper disturbance here punching dry air into the system, and the area of greatest ventilation was here in upper divergence, and you had the deep layer high off to the west. When you turn a hurricane southwest, that means that there's a deep layer high to the northwest of the storm, and remember what happens. The flow around a high in this direction is converging most of the time, so that's why when you see hurricanes take dives southwest, it's generally hard to keep them very strong. So when Carl comes down and turns southwest over Mexico, I was not surprised at all to see weakening before landfall. That's why I thought he would remain a Cat 2. He did briefly make it to Cat 3, but he weakened right off his peak before landfall there, which was good news for Veracruz, but it is still the strongest hurricane they have had, and the strongest hurricane we've had so far south in the Bay of Campeche in observed history. But at any rate, there is an envelope of low pressure that extended to the north of Carl over here, and I commented in my blog yesterday that this might form some sort of a surface low and move inland. Not really a development threat, but could cause a potent little low to bring gusty winds and heavy rains to Texas over here, and we can see that this has indeed happened. And again, this is because the area of greatest ventilation has been here, pressure's lower north of the storm, and since the storm was very small and took a dive off to the southwest, it left the scene very fast, allowed the upward motion to refocus up here, and you can start to see a little bit of a rotation that has developed in the vicinity of South Texas over here with thunderstorms off to the east. We can zoom in here and see that rotation a little closer, and thunderstorms along the coast. Radar shows the rotation over South Texas and all this rain rotating into the coast, some of it in band-like structure. This will not develop, but will be bringing rain to the Texas coast for a couple of days to come over here. Now this is the GFS, day 16, big hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. We're getting very used to and tired of seeing this on the GFS, I know. And some are starting to say, well, it's been day 16 forever. And generally when you see the GFS showing something at day 16 and then 5 days later it's still day 16, you start to wonder whether it's a ghost storm because the timeline won't advance. Well, actually, that's not entirely true in this case, because the formation date of the storm has been marching along quite nicely. Actually, this storm on the model is now starting to form at about day 7 by the 25th, and it has always been shown to form during the final week of the month. And what happens is it forms in here as a monsoonal type development, and then it stays in this area for the next 8 to 10 days. And what's more likely is that something will come, pick the storm up, take it out, and then you try to get another development behind it, because what the model is seeing is it's seeing the tendency for very low pressures in here, and it hogs the storm and keeps the heat bundled in here. What's more likely is something takes it out, and then something else tries to form behind it, because the pattern is not going to let up after just one storm. This area is going to be primed for most of October. And we can see the Canadian now starting to pick up on this. It actually has one storm come in. This is day 7 only, and it takes a storm in about 5 days up into South Texas over here, and then you can see a second one developing behind it, which by day 10 it takes it towards Florida. And we'll see what happens here. The Canadian is notorious for feeding back small systems, but we will be keeping an eye on that to see if there's one that forms sooner. And here's the European day 10. Notice this developing in the Western Caribbean, comes up out of the monsoonal trough and develops over here. And also notice the underlying yellow colors beneath here. This is indicating sub 582 decameter heights at 500 millibars over here, and you generally don't see a whole lot of yellow show up until the system becomes a strong hurricane. So what this is indicating to me is that there's a lot of heat bundling and rising in this area of the world over here, and this is indicating a strong tendency for lowering pressures and a storm that will likely strengthen as it gets drawn north down the road over here. And you can see this showing up on the European ensembles now, sub 1005 millibar pressures in the Western Caribbean by day 10. And also notice the variant showing up when you get this bomb of colors. That means that there are ensemble members showing a storm developing with deep pressures. So we're starting to see this take shape now, and I do think there's a good chance that we see a storm sitting south of the United States developing before the month is over. And looking over here at the upper divergence anomalies for the last 30 days, we can see that the focal point of divergence aloft has been over Africa and extending into the eastern Atlantic. This is what has given us our big Cape Verde hurricane season. And again, if you get a big Cape Verde season over here, you end up causing sinking air to the south of that over the Caribbean, which shuts down this area of the world. But after the Cape Verde season starts winding down by the end of September and into October, you start to fire up this area of the world and open it up, and this is what we're seeing on the GFS. We're starting to recover the colors over here. By day 5 you see a lot of green, by day 10 even more green, and by day 15 look where we are, big green paint bombs showing up over here. And we might be thinking, well, there's a lot of green still over here in the eastern Atlantic too. Well, yeah, but once we get into the end of September and into October, this green in a way is not going to really be used, because we're going to stop getting Cape Verde hurricanes. We're already starting to slow the train down over here, and the caboose is in sight. So we're not going to be using this green. It's this green over here that we're really going to be using, especially during October and November. We're going to be firing up the Southwest Atlantic Basin, and again, you shift the tracks from here to here, you're going to start threatening land, and these storms are going to start being a problem, and a problem for the United States. And I think we're going to start getting some solid landfalls out of this. We've had 4 impacts on the U.S. coast, no real land. Well, Bonnie was a landfall in Florida, but that's only one. I think we're going to get more. So let's be prepared. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.